Right, the soldering bag. The camera looks a little bit foggy to me. I think this camera might be on the way out, but we'll do the filming. And if you can't see anything, obviously you won't be watching this. But if you can, then you're watching this. Yeah. And I'll have to just get a new camera at some point. Now in the soldering bag, this. Unfortunately, my worst fears were realised. As the video goes on, the camera footage deteriorates quite considerably in quality and, well, it just looks shit. So I've spent the rest of the day, instead of doing videos, I've spent the rest of the day shopping around for a new camera, and I've found a couple. So my plan is to reshoot this video, but for now I will put this one up, as I do still feel it has value and the points I make are quite solid. It's just that you can't see, especially in the second half, what I'm talking about. So bear with us on that. What's really killed my old camera, I think, is just the mixture of dust and water that it's encountered, and the fact that it's a 20-pound GoPro clone. However, I've now bought a nice 4K camera, so the next video you see hopefully will look a lot nicer anyway. And basically moisture's gotten into the sealed super duper waterproof lens, and dust has as well, and as the camera's heated up, condensation's taken place on the actual lens, and it's sort of mopped up all the dust and made it really blurry and foggy, so it looks like the room is slowly filling with smoke as I speak. But that's not the case, obviously. It's just the camera. So bear with us, and I still hope you find this video enjoyable and informative and useful. Anyway, back to past me now. This is for fabricating copper pipe work. This is the purpose of this bag, nothing else. So I've got in here, I've got my pipe bender, obviously, that just about fits in this bag. I would like to get a bigger one that would enclose this properly, but this will do. My bender could use with a little bit of attention, but I mean, I spent a lot of time refurbishing that. I didn't film it stupidly, because when I first got this, it had no paint on it whatsoever, and I cleaned it all up, repainted it. But delving deeper, we have a used fire blanket. If you use a fire blanket, or somebody's used a fire blanket to put out a fire, obviously you can't reuse them. But what they're really good for is this is basically a giant heat mat. It's a glass fiber blanket that's designed to put out fire. So it's actually quite useful for soldering, and it unfolds quite big, because of its last intended purpose. Now you can see it's had holes burnt through it, where it was originally putting out the fire. You see it was thrown over a big thing there, I think that was a pan, and then there's some other holes here where it's been burnt. But if you double it up, it'll stop basically anything. And also, if you're soldering somewhere, like I used this on the job I was in, it was a lino floor, and I didn't want any drips of solder. When you wipe your joints with the solder brush, it flicks out everywhere. I didn't want any of it landing on the lino because it would stick to it, so I just laid this straight out, basically like a fireproof dust sheet, and it worked quite well. So it sort of bridges that gap between heat mat and dust sheet, and it's quite versatile. And you double it up like this, and nothing's getting through that. That's no flame will penetrate this. So you can double it up, use it as a heat mat, stretch it out, or you could use it in a pinch to put out a fire, but you're not supposed to reuse them for that. Now this is the latest one I bought, and I've only used it on the one job. And you see it's got a little hole in the middle to put around a pipe, and you've also got a thing here so you can hang it up with like a screw or something, or you could put wire through here. I looked at the design and I was very interested in it, that's why I picked it up. And it's quite good actually, because I just put it on I was running a piece of pipe along behind the unit, and I just tucked it on the pipe, closed it up around it so the pipe was just coming through like that. And then it was protecting all the wood around it, and I just did my solder joint. So this is very promising. This will stay with us for a long while. I had the packaging so I could tell you what it is. I think it's in here. There. This is what it is. It's made by Monument Tools. You may remember them because they make our most favoured pipe cutters. Our pipe cutters we use are Monument Tools ones. So, It's the Monument Auto Cut, and my favourite heat mat, surprisingly, is the Monument heat mat. So it's quite interesting, and it's just called the O mat. It's recommended for use with butane and propane. Oh my god. Patented for high temperature use. And I like this because it's not as flimsy. I've got some other heat mats in here. This is stiff, like it'll stand up like that. So if you tuck it in something, say if, I don't know, say if this is like a crack and you just tuck it in there like that, it'll stand up. So say, you know, your pipe works here and you just lent it up, you can, you know, do your soldering like that, and you've got something behind it. So this fulfills a very different role to this. It's more for in the action sort of work, and that's what it's called. You know, obviously I got a free one, that's why I'm mentioning it in my video, you know, with my 8 subscribers. You know, all joking aside, I'm not owned by anybody, I have no ulterior motive. What you see here is what works. And this is another heat mat I use. This is a very good one, but you can only use the one side, it's not double-sided. This is a Rothenberger one, I think, and it's seen quite a bit of use. It's quite good. It hasn't frayed or blown out or anything because they've actually taken the time to sew these edges. But you see it's all floppy, and that's why I bought this, because it's stiff, and this one isn't, and it just sort of flops about everywhere. But this is still useful. It's mostly just for lying flat, or you can fold it in half like that. But you can only use the one side. You can't use this side. This side will catch fire. I've not tested it, obviously, but that's what they said. And I even wrote on it, do not use this side, but it's worn off now, as it inevitably does. And then lastly, this is the cheapest, nastiest heat mat you can find that money can buy. And all it is just glass fiber. It's not even stitched around the edges, so you can see it's just coming out. And you know, that's okay, you know, if that's what you can afford. But it doesn't stop heat very well. But I tend to use that on areas where I don't really need to worry about protecting them. It's more, you know, I'm more like, if there's like a skirting board, I won't use this. I'll use this and possibly that and just tuck it up. And then this, say, I'll put on, like, you know, on the adjacent painted wall just to make sure that it doesn't get anything. But it's more really to just stop the flux from being flicked everywhere and the hot solder. And then I also do use, when you can't find your heat mat, or when you leave your heat mat at another job, you end up having to improvise on the spot. And I tell you, this and this are in the same league, because they're shit. They don't work very well. But I tell you what, it's better than nothing. Now, with using it like something like an old dog tin, you know, obviously you need the tin snips and you can stretch it out into a flat piece, but as long as this isn't physically touching what you're trying to protect, you're okay. If it's touching it, then this whole tin will heat up and it will just burn what's behind it. But if you can just bend it, and this will stay rigid, that's why it's more like this in terms of, like, you know, what it's used for. It's more of a stiff shape. And it's also springy as well, so you can tuck it behind some pipes and get it in some tight spots that you can't get the other stuff in. Obviously this one's an old one that I've used quite a bit. But you could use other pieces of metal, I'm sure, for the same purpose. It doesn't have to be a dog tin. But as long as this doesn't physically touch what you're trying to protect, it won't conduct the heat to it. And it provides a physical barrier to stop the flame getting onto it. That's why I use it. And obviously you've got to take the label off. I mean, I didn't in this case, and it just burnt off. And you'll get a lot of smoke, but it's another way of using it. You know, you've only got what's in between your ears when you're out in the real world, and sometimes you know, you've got to use that. And I've got a couple of other tins in here now just for such a use. I've got a circular one. This one, I've not used it very much, but I've got that in case, so I can just cut this and stretch this out into a sheet. But I've also used it to just put round a piece of pipe and then soldered down into it and kind of try to use it to reflect the heat back. That's what the idea was, but I don't really use it that much, because then once you've soldered it, it's stuck on the piece of pipe, so you can't get rid of it. So all this is really, in reality, is just a spare one for that when that eventually goes. And then I've got another tin here that I keep a little, you know, a little cleaning sponge in. And this inside here is coated in plastic, so I'll fill this with water, stuff that in there, and then that'll stop it. You know, you can swing this about and it won't spill, because the thing is with a wet rag, if you fill it up with water, the container that it's in, it tends to slop and spill everywhere. Whereas with this, you take this out, you squeeze it, and then that's it. You've got your wet thing and you've got all the spare water in there, so you don't have to keep rinsing your rag out. Just use a sponge, and then once you've finished your soldering, you know, you've got the scouring pad. You can clean it up if it's got like a bit of burnt brush on it or whatever. If it doesn't look pretty, you can pretty it up with the scouring pad on the back. So these cleaning sponges, you know, just an old cleaning sponge. If you're, you know, replacing it, if you've got like a new one that you're using, then instead of chucking the old one in the bin, use it for your soldering stuff. You can see this is like a mix of good equipment and then really basic bare bones equipment that I've got in here. PTFE tape, I'm not going to tell you what that's for, that's a secret. No, I'm just kidding, it's just for jointing, you know what PTFE tape, well if you're watching this and you're a plumber you know what it's for. But I just keep all of my bags, because I tend to find, I keep a few bags in this tool bag because sometimes I won't have this with me, but I tend to find if I don't keep all my PTFE in one spot, I'll end up starting rolls and then I'll start another roll and I won't finish and I'll have a load of half-used rolls. So I've said, right, enough is enough. I've put them all in one bag and I'm going to work my way through them before I buy any more. And the same thing with all this emery cloth. This is just old emery cloth. Like, people just use it a bit and throw it away, and I don't really understand it, because you can use this forever basically before it wears out. But because, you know, when it's new it takes off a lot of paint and then it takes off less and less, people say, oh, it doesn't work. I haven't got time for that. And they just chuck it away. And then I pick it up and put it in this bag, and I use it when I just need a light piece just to do a little bit of cleaning. Because that isn't my main method of cleaning stuff. I use a knife and then I use this. This will save you so much time. This will rock your world, this little invention here. And it's so good, I've even got a spare. And they do wear out, these brushes. I mean, this one's starting to get worn and torn, and I've not even used it. It's the spare one in the bag. And it's just getting worn out from being bashed about in this huge bloody bag. But these will rock your world. I put the caps on it so I can put it in my pocket and these bristles won't stick into me, because that's the only way you really carry it. I'll have to get some more compression caps so I can carry it around, but that's how I recommend you carry it. That's how you stop it from just stabbing you to death. This has been worn out a lot. You can see the tip of this is like, you know, it's in. It's not like, it's not the same shape as that anymore. But this still cleans fittings even now, so they do last a lot longer than they used to. I don't know about this one. This one's a Draper. I don't know what this one is. That's a silver line. I imagine these are all made in the same factory. I mean, they look like it. I think they probably just changed the colour of the plastic, you know, for a different brand that buys them. They make them for. I imagine this is all just made in the same factory in China, and they just do different colours for different people. So I don't know if there's actually any disparity between the quality of the metal used in there. I wouldn't imagine so, because they are just too similar. But I could be wrong. I'll find out, won't I? There's a couple of other bits of copper. They can go in there. I like to keep odd pieces of copper in here just for general use, because, you know, you don't want a whole length if you're just going to, you know, put in a bit of extra pipe for a new tap or something. You know, you can just reach in here. You've got all your odd bits with you. You've not got to put them in a separate bag. You know, they're not all the way back on the van, and you're forced to just cut bits off a new length. The whole idea behind this is that you have everything in here you could possibly need. So this bag is like a one-stop bit of shopping. Obviously I don't put the fittings in here, because then this bag would just fill up and it would just be a complete, you know, nightmare. I mean, can you imagine just putting fittings loose in here? They'd all fill up with dirt. There'd be no organisation, no order. And yeah. Now I don't usually keep my torches on my cylinders. I take them off, because my plumbing tutor, he told me a story about how he blew his eardrums out because these leak, and this was slowly leaking in his van, and he smokes, and so he went to you know, have a smoke in his van one day, and he blew every single window out of his van. The back windows, the windscreen, the front, it all just went bang and left his ears ringing, because there was, you know, a mixture of gas and air that made a you know, made it combustible. And so when he lit his lighter, it blew his eardrums out, and he said, "Oh, it was ringing for ages, and then it cost a lot to get his all his windows replaced." So I always recommend you take these off. I don't want to find out. I don't smoke, so I'm not got to worry about that. But I have come to use a bottle on a torch and just find it's empty, and I know it wasn't empty the last time I used it. So there's that. These will last a lot longer if you don't use them, or don't. Yeah, they'll last a lot longer if you don't use them, but they'll last a lot longer in storage if you don't leave them in your torch. Obviously, if you use this all day, every day, who cares? But, you know, I haven't got that sort of use going on. I'll use these occasionally. I mean, depending on what the job is. Oh, look, that's come off. This doesn't really work anyway, so I'm just going to leave that off. I tried attaching this. This is the actual sparker unit. You can see that works, but it doesn't like the torch, and it kind of broke off, and I tried to reattach it with that Jubilee clip, but I always use my Zippo lighter. I don't know if you've seen me in some of my, if you look at some of my other videos, I always just use the lighter. I don't even bother trying to use that anymore. So now that'll stay off there. And I like this one because it can get into tight spaces and whatnot for soldering. It's just a bit more versatile than this one. I still like this torch. This is a Superfire 2. This is what everyone's got now. Actually, no, the NERAD torch has come out, and that's got a cold end. Like, you can run it with map gas. I remember seeing the guy at the you know, the suppliers. He had a big map gas cylinder in here, and he was running it till it was red hot, and then he touched his face with it, just like yeah, you know, like that, on his skin, and everyone was like, "Oh my god!" And it was like a big dramatic, like, "Oh, it's the cold technology." So they've developed a better torch than this now. It's the same price as the Rothberger, I think, but it's just it's basically so that you don't burn the carpet. That's the thinking behind it. But I don't see the point of investing in one of those, because if I'm using this, I won't burn the carpet, because I can just point it so that the torch won't fall over. If the bottle's here, and that's there, and you just point it so it's like that, and then the torch just stands on its own, and it's less likely to fall over. That, and I've got all these heat mats, so more often than not, I've always got a place to put the hot end of my torch where it won't burn anything. That's another thing. Flux brushes. Hold on, what else we got in here? We've got this thing. Now I bought this. I used this a couple times, but the thing is, it's a good idea. The thinking behind this is that it goes on the end of your nozzle like that, and then when you're soldering, it reflects. It's a bit like what I was saying about this, to put it on the pipe to reflect the heat back. It's a similar idea, and this is a good idea. Don't get me wrong, it'll make it more efficient, and it'll also help you stop burning stuff. But this is so big, you can't get it in where you need to go, and it's adjustable, but it's just faff. On reflection, I don't think I would have bought. I mean, I bought this when it was on sale. I never pay full price for stuff, but I don't think it's a good idea, and I've used it in a couple of circumstances. But you won't use this as much as you would use this, just because you can't physically get it in there in a lot of these places. But when you can use it, it works fantastically, and the pipe heats up noticeably faster than what it did before. And also, it's a little bit shoddily made as well, like these brackets. Like, you can slide that off of there, and that, oh, that's gone, oopsie. And then you can slide that. Oh no, you can't slide that one off. But you know, they should have built it a bit better than that. I mean, could they not have bent that piece down so that that half of it doesn't come off? You know, it's not very grunt proof. And if it's not grunt proof, it's got no place in this bag, let me tell you. But I keep it in here now, and I use it on the odd occasion, but when this breaks or goes, or if I lose it, or if somebody borrows it, I'm not going to like waste time and energy worrying about where it's gone. I'm not going to miss it really, because I can just use the tins for the same purpose. That fulfills the same purpose as a lot of these bits of metal over here do. So yeah, we've talked about the torches. This one's good. I mean, my father's used the hell out of one of these. Not for plumbing, he doesn't plumb, but he just uses the hell out of these for lighting fires and well, I don't know what he uses them for really, but there's one in our garage that we've used for like 20 years and it still works. So I think as long as you don't physically damage it, it's fine. As long as you don't like run it over with your van. Solder, lead-free solder. You can't use leaded solder on pipes anymore really. And you know, I learnt with lead-free solder, and I don't really see a reason to use leaded solder anymore, well, at all. Like, why would I use something that I can only use on a few specific systems? I mean, the difference in price is negligible now. It's like £7 for 500 grams of lead solder and £14 for lead-free. You know, so what's the point of using the leaded? It's a little bit cheaper. If I had to do a lot, and I mean a lot of pipe work, like if that's all I did all day every day, just pipe fabrication, and I knew it was like for central heating or gas or whatever, and I was using, you know, roll after roll of solder, then it would make sense. But just for a general soldering bag, no point. I always have two of everything, you notice? 2 cylinders, 2 rolls of solder, because invariably you'll run out, and it will be at 10 o'clock at night when everything's closed. And yeah, the only thing I don't have 2 of is tubs of solder. This tub of solder is empty. I've got olives in here. I washed this out very many times, and I use it to keep olives in, so that, you know, they don't get crushed and squashed. And I also have this old thermos. You remember this? And this has got all my 22mm olives in, I think. Something like that. And again, it's just another container that won't get crushed very easily. And I could use it for the same things I use that for. I could use it for my wet rag. Just depends. But at the moment I'm using it for olives. There's no set use for everything in here. And I've got spare vent pins in here that I've, you know, acquired over various, you know, little jobs. Mostly at my granddad's house. We just when we take out an old radiator, we take the pins out of it to have the spares. And I've actually got some more here. I'll put those in that little baggie. And then I've got more hen's teeth. And sometimes these do go. Like they'll just, like the customer will lose them if you leave them on the windowsill, or you know, sometimes they just break off. So it's good to have spares. Yeah, and I tend to keep them in there. That's the most logical place to keep them, because if you're doing work for radiators, then you'd have this with you anyway. So this figures. Now I like this flux. Well, I liked this flux. This new flux, Power Flow, there used to be like a sort of nice stiffer consistency, but this stuff is just extra runny. Or maybe it isn't anymore. No, it is. Look, it's wibbly like a bit of custard. You can see it moving, well you can't because my head is shaking at the same time. But it's a bit too runny for me now. I mean, I'll use it and it's fine, you can solder with it, but it's not. I bought this little dainty tub of it to try. Before, obviously, this was full of flux and I was using it. And that stuff was like really, it was like a stiffer consistency. And that was better than this. This is too runny and it melts too quickly now. I don't know if it's just because it's bigger. It's a bigger pot and so it's got more of it in it and that's what it is, but I don't know. But that works fine. That's the flux I use, and none of my joints have leaked, so it can't be that bad, right? And it is for lead free, so that's fine. And then I've got jointing compound here, you know, for compression fittings. This stuff is horrible. I don't really want to get it on my nice gloves. But there you go, that's what it is. You rub that on, you know, olives and other stuff, and it's smelly and horrible, and you don't want to touch it or get it in your eye or any part of your body really. But that's what I have, and a tub of that will last you ages. Even if you're doing stuff all day, every day, that will last ages. You don't need very much. Then I got spare brushes. Initially I couldn't find any. This was back in the days before I had, you know, accounts at like Plum Center and stuff, and knew where to buy stuff. And I didn't, when I was first learning, I didn't know where to get flux brushes, so I just bought decorators brushes, you know, like art brushes, and I've been using them, and I haven't gone through these yet. This is like the last little one, and then I've got this big one. I'm not sure if I'll use this big one. Actually, I might. I think this would be better for bigger fittings like 35mm and all that, because you don't want to use this tiny thing to flux them up. It'll take you all day. So I'll probably keep this one and not use it until I have a really big pipe fitting to solder. If I have a really big pipe fitting to solder. And this is like the last wooden brush, and all of these had really long handles like this one, and I just chopped them off. Obviously now I've got nice flux brushes, but those cost money, and these cost like £1 for like 4 of them. So you can do the maths. Oh no, I've got another one in here as well. Oh. So they do last a long time, but what you'll find is you'll end up with like black stains on the pipes, because this is like horsehair or something. You'll end up with black stains on the pipes, but I just get the sponge like I showed you earlier, and I just scrub them off and they come straight off. So go figure. But this is the sort of thing you really want. You want just a standard flux brush with a synthetic, you know, hair. You don't want real hair like these. This is okay, but yeah. No, I've got 2, so I've still got a long way to go with this brush. I mean, this brush is near the end of its life. It's like fucking useless, but that is the state of, like, any plumbing video you see and he gets the flux brushes out, they're always horrible. And that's what it will be like every time, guaranteed. All your flux brushes will be horrible. And in here as well, I've got some, I'm not sure why that's in here. You see, you got to be disciplining yourself. You've got to put it all in one place and only use that bag. You know, you end up with these little rolls here and there, half used, half started. And yeah, and then in here I've got just other stubs of pipe. In fact, I'll put the little stubs of pipe in this pocket, so I've just got less clattering around in the main part. That'll do it some good. There's probably a reason why I took a lot of pipe out of that pocket, but it'll probably fall out or something, but I'll put it back in there for now. And then in the end here, obviously we've got the guides for the bender, 15 and 22. You don't want to keep these near your flux, because the flux, it's acid free, but it's alkaline, and that will eat this aluminium. These are aluminium, and it will just eat it. Like my granddad, he left his one of his guides, like, you know, he just basically threw all of his pipe stuff in a box, and one of his guides ended up in a tub of solder, and we got it out, and it was all powdered white aluminium oxide, and it'd just been eaten away. So I always keep these separate from that. And then in this pocket, I'm supposed to have rags, and I've got one left, you know, for like wiping stuff and wiping up water. But those are my rags there. They're all soaking wet and they're drying. And I kind of want some new ones, but that's what I'll do. I'll just stuff them in this net pocket, because it's not good for holding anything else. And then I had some heating plugs in here somewhere. That's brushes. That's nothing now, because I took the PFE out of there. Yeah, here we go. Heating plugs for plugging off a F&E tank or a cold water storage system. Quite useful. I'll just use these on the outlets inside the tank. I won't use the open vent for this. I'll just use a speed-fit cap for that. Obviously, you've got to remember to take the cap out, but by that same grace, you know, people say it's unsafe to put a cap on the open vent. By that same grace, you've got to remember to take these out, and so if you're up there, you know, you're going to take it off, aren't you? If you leave any cap on there, it doesn't matter if you leave a rubber bung or a speed-fit cap on the open vent, it won't work. I mean, in theory, these rubber bungs should come out if the worst should happen and you should, you know, forget to go into the loft and unplug the tank for some reason and not realise, although you would, because no water would come out of the taps, but all the heating system wouldn't fill up, but never mind. So say if you didn't do that, and then somehow the system managed to run anyway, and then a fault condition occurred and there was nowhere for the water to vent, that's when it would be dangerous. But it's a highly unlikely scenario if you remember to just simply go back up there, which you have to do anyway, because you'll have to shut the loft up and turn the light off, and you know, you might even remember then, you might see before you turn the light off, oh, there's still a big bright white cap on the open vent, maybe I should go take that off. Unless you don't know what you're doing, in which case nothing will save you. No amount of built-in designed safety will save you if you just, you know, don't know what you're doing. Then lastly, I keep a torch in here. I used to carry this torch all the time. This is a Maglite Solitaire with the LED conversion, and I thought this is the torch for me. Indestructible. But the battery life isn't very long on it, unfortunately. And then when the battery does go, it just goes. It just turns itself off, and you're thinking, oh, is it? And then it'll turn itself back on, and you'll hit it and think it's working. And it's just vexes me, so I've taken it out of frontline use and put it in this bag in the rare occasion that I go up to the loft and I've not got a single torch on my body. There's one in here I can use. But I'm not relying on it day in and day out. You can't make me. And so yeah. And then I've got this. This is one of my folding mirrors, but it's obviously broken, but the light still works, so I'll keep that in there as well. So you can use it as a little torch. Yeah. And also you can use it as a poking stick as well for just poking fittings back in place. You know, say if you start soldering and something falls out, you could use this to push it back or hold it, because you can stretch this out and angle this head. So a lot of the time I'll tuck this in somewhere and use it to stop like a pipe dropping out as like a, you know, as like a spare hand basically. I don't use this that often, but when I do, it's handy. So yeah. Anyway, we'll put this all back together. I like to try and keep it organised, but obviously when you're again on the clock, it's hard to put everything back as it should go. So I thought I would show you me putting this all back as it should go. See what you think. If you think anything's missing, let me know. But I think I'm pretty squared away to fabricate pipework with this lot here. Put that over there actually, put those in there. Obviously the fittings are in a separate container. They're in a sealed container because, you know, you think about it when you're soldering. You spend a lot of your time cleaning the fittings, don't you? So my thought is, this is my brainwave, my $1 million idea. If you put them in a container that shuts out the dirt and the air and the oxygen and stops them going all dull and brown, then the fittings will be cleaner. So then when you come to solder, you're spending less time cleaning the fittings and more time soldering. So it does speed you up, in theory. I don't know whether it does in reality. I've not done enough work really to know for sure, because then you've got the added time to bring in a whole different container rather than having the fittings in your bag with you. The time taken to bring in a whole different container for work is, you know, so it's a more complex logistical system, so you've got to weigh these things up as you go. Just trying to find a place to put this. I can put this in there now because I took that PTFE out of there. And I try and pack this a certain way every time just so I know where everything is. It never lasts or you know, lasts long because everything just gets disorganized, you know. Well, when I opened the bag up, it was Friday night and now this is Monday night. And the bottles go in there like that. In the bottom with the little things on that don't help at all to stop the air coming out. And that can go across them like that, and that way it won't get bent out of shape. And this one, that's my main one. Put that actually in there like that. Actually, I'll put it in between them. Like that. That'll do. I think I'll put my harder objects over here, because I want to put the head of the bender then there. And this can go there as well. And then that can go in there. Yep. That's alright, isn't it? And this in here. And the PTFE in the top, because sometimes you just, you know, sometimes I'll just go and grab the PTFE out of this bag and I'll just zip it back up again. And so I want that near the top so I can quickly access it. And then we close it up like this and just yank on the zipper for all shall suffer. The guide's back in there, yep. Yank on the zipper for all shall suffer. Remember, it's a cheap bag, we can always buy more. And then that helps keep everything inside, so now this can be thrown around in the back of my car as I'm in a high-speed car chase. All the little bits of pipe that I decided to put back in that pocket will fall out. But apart from that, everything is self-contained, nice and organised. It's better than a tray. you know, if the tray falls down or whatever, everything falls out. So that's why it's in a bag like this. And then also it's easier to carry, you know, nice handles. And that is my soldering stuff. So yeah, tell me what you think. If you've got a different way of organising your stuff, let me know. But I tend to build it as a kit for an express purpose, and then I'll modify things and change things depending on what I find works and what doesn't work. And when I'm working, like when I finish, I'll actually physically write down what I think went well and what hasn't went well. It's like a, you know, like a report as such. And then I'll use that and I'll look back on that information months in advance when I'm making decisions about what to buy. And that's how I do it. So that's something else to consider. But anyway, you know, tell me what you think. And as always, goodbye and good luck in your soldering endeavours. And I'll try and do some proper soldering videos soon, not just the camera's on my head while I'm working and I'm just swearing and not really talking about what I'm doing. So we'll do some proper instructional videos and get into the science behind it. And good lord, that camera is foggy. I don't know if we'll be able to upload this. But anyway, see you later.